Hello, welcome everybody. I'm just so glad to be back, and I want to talk about digital fasting today, and I will let you know on in these topics I bring up both a scientific and a Christian perspective on each one. Wuffler, thank you so much for the subscription. Hey Nate, how's it going, everybody? Thank you, Surfin. 4 months, 4 days. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. But yeah, we talk about different topics, both from a scientific and a Christian perspective, to try and uncover truth. I feel like both sides of the coin are looking for truth. They are not at odds with each other, but just trying their best to uncover truth. And I want to kind of go through digital fasting today. Wolfler, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Okay. So, what is a digital fast and why should I go on one? Oh, it redid the noise. Oh my goodness. Okay, also known as other terms like digital detox, digital Sabbath, and unplugging, the idea behind a digital fast is to voluntarily and deliberately stop using all connected devices, smartphones, computers, tablets, and so on. So, you know, how everything is digital nowadays, and so this is kind of like removing yourself from this. And like... So this digital fast is kind of like replacing anything that you're doing digitally with a non-digital task. So like going on a walk or a hike, or organizing a potluck meal, it says, with friends. Just getting together and being present in the moment. Actually, in theory, the idea of a digital fast has generated a lot of interest, with organizations such as Adbusters and the Huffington Post each promoting their respective versions of digital fasts. But there's like two sides to this, where some people think that it is crucial that you separate yourself from technology. Because you can kind of lose yourself inside of technology, and it starts to dictate your actions. And under this perspective, unchecked use of digital technology is a potential problem that could have serious consequences. One avenue to gain control over the problem is to disconnect from the source. This calls it, an addiction. It can be addicting sometimes. Thanks, Wolfler. But then on some people think that technology actually has helped us as a society, and to remove yourself would cause harm. Like depriving yourself of like being together and expressing your creativity and like creative expression. But I feel like you kind of know your own health and like where you spend your time and your who you invest in. This article says that I choose to unplug from all digital devices from time to time, usually for a few hours or sometimes for the weekend. If nothing else, digital fasting is a way to prove to myself that I have the strength to act willfully in my relationship with technology. So I think everything with moderation. Digital fast, that digital as in electronic, or more of a social media digital fast? So anything on electronic, yeah. Yeah, so anywhere where you're replacing being with people and being present in the moment and replacing it with digital replacement. So like going on Netflix or just watching for hours and not really connecting with people or things like that. So yes, all electronic essentially. So in this article by Dr. Diva Sharma and Vivek M. Arya, people these days have a multifunctional device for interpersonal communication, work, online education, and just for entertainment. Tech devices have become an unavoidable part of human life, but excessive screen time can negatively affect our well-being. In order to know how digital technologies are changing our world, one doesn't have to look far. Social media addiction is a recognized behavioral addiction that can be characterized by being overly concerned about social media. So it's not all about social media addiction. Even it could be the use of any function or app on a smartphone. A known problem is something called information overload, where you cram so many things into your day. Overloading your body with anything will strangle your soul, whether this is food, alcohol, technology, or work. We need to take purposeful breaks from everything, consciously abstaining from work, from food, from technology. In addition to doing a week-long physical detox each month, another powerful practice you should try is a digital fast. It is one of the most powerful and rejuvenating practices which not only provide clarity, motivation, and enhance creativity, but it teaches you to embrace boredom and solitude. Promoting digital fasting has been commonly observed among Jains? What is that? Okay. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. I didn't really realize that this is from a Muslim perspective. Hey, Zelda! But yeah, I was trying to look at different articles on digital fasting and ways that why a digital fast is important, provide clarity, motivation. So I think it's really important that we disconnect from any kind of addiction and replace it with good things. Cool. Yes. So I will say it's going to be happening. We as a community from the Hopeful Disasters, we're going to be doing a digital fast tomorrow. So if you would like to join us, we would love to participate together in digitally fasting, removing other sources, digital sources. What about the addiction of replacing it with good things? Hello, Joram. How's it going? Let's see. So, like, if you are constantly going to something and it is becoming a part of your life, if it is impacting your relationships and impacting how you perceive the world, it can be a negative influence in your life. And so sometimes recognizing that it can be a problem and replacing it with good things, like just being intentional with what you're trying to do um, with how you're doing things, and not letting other things dictate your actions, I think can be very beneficial. Nice, Wilfler. Hey, Tommy! Welcome, everybody. So glad everyone's here. I hope that answered your question, Joram. If you have any more, if you want to talk more about it, I'd be happy to talk. Okay, so for the Christian perspective, I kind of want to dive in onto the core meat of the reason why we should slow down and why we should focus more on God in these moments instead of what technology can do for us. The philosopher Dallas Willard once called, he said that hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. And he said that you must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And I feel like with technology, we are constantly trying to hurry to the next thing and fit so much into our days. And that is not what God intended. There are two different types of being busy. There's a lot to do. So Jesus, he had a lot to do within 3 years. But I think that's healthy because, there can be a lot to do, but how you manage your time is important. And then the other type of busy is too much to do, where we end up speeding up our mind and our body and our relationships and our interactions with other people to this sort of pace that God did not intend for us to do. Yes. Yeah, funny you should say that, Zelda. When I was preparing for this and trying to eliminate hurry, like the need for hurry to try and get all of this down, I found I had so much time because I was focusing and slowing down. Corrie ten Boom, the Dutch watchmaker and Christian woman who was recognized as righteous among the nations, which is like someone who's recognized as really helping the Jews for her efforts in sheltering Jews from the German occupation of the Netherlands, once said, "If the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy." Yeah, Corey. We hear that sin is missing the mark. And you kind of wonder, what is the mark? Or what if the mark is union with God? And the greatest commandment Jesus pointed out in Matthew 22, he said, what is the greatest commandment in the law? He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment, and the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets." And so us hitting the mark is loving the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. At the time, the Pharisees in this passage were trying to pin Jesus down to ask him which of the 10 commandments was the one that they should focus on. And Jesus said, essentially, you can't pick one because that's not the point. The point is, God created us for a specific purpose, to love Him and to love each other. If you choose not to love God or to not love people, the people He created, then you would be breaking one of those initial commandments. So, that is what God wants us to focus on. Zelda says, I've heard that Corey quote so many times, but it hit harder today because just the other day I was acknowledging how busy I've been, and the enemy is using it to keep me from the ministry God has. Yes, so frustrating. So just wait till you hear some more things that I have to say. The Professor Michael Zigarelli conducted a 5-year survey of 20,000 Christians with ages ranging from 15 to 88 across 139 countries. He identified busyness as the major block in most people's relationship to God. The summary that in this survey, the summary that came from it was that Christians are assimilating a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, which leads to God becoming more marginalized in Christian lives, which leads to 3, a deteriorating relationship with God, which leads to 4, Christians becoming even more vulnerable to adopting secular assumptions about how to live. It's a major problem, which then leads to 5, more conformity to a culture of busyness. And then the cycle begins again. So we're slowly leading ourselves away from a relationship with God. Donna says, and a lot of that stems from expectations put on us from the world. Society essentially tells us if you aren't a go, you aren't doing enough. 100%. It's such a standard response for why don't we spend more time with God? I'm too busy. I've been guilty of that at times too. Yes. God, family, friends. Yes. All right. So here is 10 signs that you're moving too fast through life. Let's see how you do. And by the way, this is not judging based off like your interactions with a stranger or a person at church, like a random person at church, but with somebody you're actually close to and all of your trust structures are around with. So a roommate or a brother or a sister or a spouse or a best friend, where you're actually yourself around them. So these are 10 signs that you're moving too fast through life. 1, irritability. Irritability. You either are quick to jump at people, you're on edge, and you take offense on an easy level, so things tick you off easily. 2, hypersensitivity. It takes very little just to hurt your feelings or to set you off or make you mad or put you in a little bit of a funk. Oh, and by the way, these 10 signs were put together by Ruth Haley Barton. So those are 1, irritability, 2, hypersensitivity, 3, restlessness. When you actually carve out time to rest or take a Sabbath, you can't actually rest or relax. You have to have your phone on or TV or music or podcast. You can't just sit there with your thoughts and actually relax. Oh no. 4, compulsive overworking. You have to constantly work. You have to get another email or another hour of study in, or you're constantly trying to work, even when you're like off the job. 5, emotional numbness. You lose your capacity to feel and left with the narrowest bandwidth of emotions, which for most people can be anger or anxiety. You lose your capacity for emotions like wonder, gratitude, empathy, and compassion. So that's emotional numbness. 6, escapist behaviors. You escape into like Netflix or Disney Plus or alcohol or work or even church, whatever your cultural narcotic of choice is. You're trying to distract yourself from the pain of your reality because you're actually too tired to do this. Because it actually takes a little bit of emotional energy and discipline to do the things that are actually life-giving for your soul. I don't have time. Zelda says I don't have the time something on, but I definitely have an impossible hard time relaxing because I just think of all I have to get done. Scary how much busyness can impact people. Sounds like there's a connection between depression and busyness. Not necessarily to take away pain, just because I'm bored. Okay. Great points, guys. Okay, so 7 is disconnected from your identity and calling, where we lose track and lose sight of who we are and who we're not, what we're called to do or not called to do. We're disconnected from it. 8, not able to attend to basic human needs like sleeping 8 hours of sleep. I'm guilty of that. Water, like just drinking water, home-cooked meals, friendships, and getting your to-do list done. Just basic human needs and taking care of yourself. I know a lot of people struggle with this one. There definitely is, John, because we keep busy to not have to identify the depression, but the busier we get, the less time we have to deal with the depression. It gets worse. Yes. Yeah. Number 9 is hoarding energy, where you feel like you have to hold back your energy, like you can't give it to a certain person, like this last person at night you're talking to, just because you have a meeting in the morning. Like you're holding back your energy, hoarding it, and so I can't do this right now because I have something else to do. And then 10 is slippage in our spiritual practices. So disciplines that actually create space for us to let God love us into the people of love are the first things that often go, rather than the first things that we go to. So a lot of these things I've definitely not done well on, but yeah, that's 10 signs that you're moving too fast through life. Yes. Oh, yeah, when you were eating, I was like, yes, she's eating before stream. Yeah, people saying I'm too busy to read my Bible. Yeah. Well, I'm convicted. Just wait, it gets better. Okay, so think about realize how many of the stories of Jesus or the teachings of Jesus himself were actually in response to an interruption. Jesus is never just in a hurry, but he's there to offer a wisdom, a parable, a healing, a prophetic word, a rebuke, whatever the moment calls for. And I'm reminded of, is this it? Yes. Of 1 John 2, but whoever keeps my word, in him truly the love of God is perfected. By this we know that we are in him. Whoever says he abides in him ought to walk in the same way in which he walked. So, looking at how Jesus did things, we are abiding in him. Whoever says I know him but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. So I'm reminded of that, and like we're trying to find out how to live like Jesus. C.S. Lewis said something to the effect that how you respond to an interruption is who you really are. I know as parents you're immediately confronted with this statement. Like how you respond to an interruption can really speak to where your heart is. And also think of the passages where Jesus had to remove himself to go away from the busyness of the world and just spend time with his Father. So let's go through some of those. So here is Luke 5, where we're talking about Jesus cleanses a leper. So this is the story of Jesus cleansing the leper, and he says, stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will help you, and be clean. But now even more the report about him went abroad, and great crowds gathered to hear him and to be healed of their infirmities. But he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. Oh, have fun, Donna. Have fun. Ice cream is so good for the soul. Okay, so here's some. So when we think about how Jesus spoke about prayer, he says, and when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. So truly a heart issue. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So it's so important to take time to be with the Father. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. So I'm going to go to some specific stories, like Jesus feeds the 5,000. And we have, like, they went and told Jesus. He just learned that John the Baptist had died. When he had heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a desolate place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. So here he feeds the 5,000 and does a miraculous miracle. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he dismissed the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. And we find out how long he was there. And the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. So he stayed up there for a long time. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Here's in Mark, talking about the same passage. And he went out after he had taken leave of them. He went up on the mountain to pray. So here is different nuggets from the same story, talking about how he went to go pray before the betrayal and arrest of Jesus. So he yeah. Yes. So many times Jesus says, I need some time to pray about this. And when he came out and went, as was his custom, to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. And when he came to the place, he said to them, pray that you may not enter into temptation. Now this statement comes up again. Pray that you may not enter into temptation. And he withdrew from them about a stone's throw. Throw a stone. Imagine how far that would be. And knelt down and prayed. So he went away from them. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Here he is trying to center himself before... he's tempted to do many things that will... people tempted Jesus, like, if you are the savior, then why not save yourself? And why not, you're a God, why do you stand there on the cross? And there appeared to him an angel from heaven, strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. So he's still there away from them, and he continues to pray more. And then when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. He said to them, why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation. So there's a little bit more detailed passage here in Matthew. Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. That is so important right there. Again, for the second time, he went and prayed. Went away. He went away. Like, it's just so important that when things are looking difficult, like here he's seeing his disciples like sleeping. And I don't know what went through their minds, but it just feels like they're not present and they're not in the moment. I don't know. Maybe it was a long day. Here again in Mark. And going a little farther, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass from him. John Mark Comer said that at its most basic, we become more loving when we let God love us. At a theological level, history says the same thing, and neurobiology says the same thing, that we become more loving through the experience of love, both from the Spirit of God and from the community of Jesus, whether that's friends, family, or the church, in order to form you and heal your soul and let you and I grow into people who, in all of our perfection, have become people who are pervaded by love. He thinks that most people who don't like reading the Bible, like Final Asgard was saying, is because they want to hurry through it. They don't take the time. And I feel like you can't just read through the Bible. You have to digest it and see that it is good, like Donna was saying earlier. And it comes to no surprise in Paul's definition of love to the Corinthians that the first descriptor of love is patient. Hurry just doesn't have time to listen and feel your pain and love you and see life from your perspective and empathize with you. It's late for the next thing. But God says that love is patient. So the solution is not more time. A lot of the times I'm like, man, I just wish I had just a little bit more time in the day and then I could get everything I needed to get done. It's not more time, but it's to slow down and simplify our life around becoming people of love. I feel like that a lot. Sometimes I hurry through it, but I don't know how to study, so I read. I get that. And sometimes it takes a little bit of diving into what the passages mean. Hey, Galaxy! So glad you're here. One way to see this is recognizing your limitations. Just like in the garden in Genesis 3, where they're told that they can be like gods, that there's not enough for you in the garden, there's more for you. Step out of your limitations and do more with your life, and hurry. To step out of your schedule, your emotional capacity, your relational maturity, and even God's calling on your life. There's so many books out there that talk about reaching your full potential, which is great. A lot of people don't utilize what they are able to do, but there's another side to the story, which is accepting your limitations, like the limitations that God put on us. We can't just be everything for everybody. Unfortunately, God made us a certain way, made time a certain way, that we need to step away at times, just like Jesus did, to pray. And it is not just about being in community with everybody. It's also about loving God and taking that time to be away with Him. And I feel like John 15, we're trying to figure out what is the solution for slowing down and really diving into Scripture. I feel like John 15 talks about this very well, where this is Jesus talking to the disciples and giving nuggets and explaining everything and giving them wisdom. And here Jesus is talking about how He is the way, the truth, and the life. The chapter before, He talks about how He is, there's no one comes to the Father except through me. And here He describes Himself. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Now, if you know of how certain vines, like grapevines, they have to go and there's chalices and structures that it needs to grow up so that it can produce healthy fruit and not be attacked by animals and things like that. So here I feel like Jesus is kind of touching on that. I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, He takes away, And every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. So realizing your limitations and saying, this is not for me, this does not please God, this is something I need to work on. Or I feel like having a structure around how we live our lives can benefit us and help us to grow in the spirit, and to grow and produce fruit. And in Galatians 5, it talks about this fruit. And I feel like this is such a great passage to dive into. So yeah, I wanted to get at the core of fasting and why we should do a digital fast. Getting away from the busyness and the hurry from life, and just being able to reset once in a while. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Here we are. You were running well. Who hindered you from obeying the truth? This persuasion is not from him who calls you. So, looking at what is dragging you away from God. For you are called to freedom, brothers. Only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not consumed by one another. And here we talk about the fruits. So I feel like this goes hand in hand with John 15, where each branch that does not bear fruit, he takes away. As the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. So it's about walking in step with Jesus and understanding that we need to walk in step with the Spirit so that we are able to produce good fruit. So I just want to take some time as we do a digital fast tomorrow, where you can spend looking over one of these passages. I really think that Galatians 5, John 15, 1 John 2, and Matthew 22 are really great passages to look at. So I'm just trying to give you some passages to look at. And now, little children, abide in him, so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink from him in shame at his coming. If you know that he is righteous, you may be sure that everyone who practices righteousness has been born of him. Cool. Well, I feel like it's really important to understand our limitations and realize that God has good fruit for us to bear when we focus on him and how he wants things to be structured. Listening to him and relying on him to set the pace. Love is patient. We should not be trying to rush to love God, to rush to read the Bible. But we should be slowing down and really paying attention to what he has to say. So yeah, that's it for me. And I really think this fasting is really good, and a really good step in the right direction. I just wanted to try and get at the core of things, why we were to do this, and just take a moment to listen to God.